The Lives of the Saints by the Reverend Alban Butler, taken from the 4th edition, published in 1954. February 25th. Saint Ethelbert. He was King of Kent, the 5th descendant from Hengist, who first settled the English Saxons in Britain in 448, and the foundation of whose kingdom is dated in 455. Ethelbert married, in his father's lifetime, Bertha, the only daughter of Caribert, king of Paris, and cousin germain to Clotaire, king of Soissons, and Childebert, king of Austrasia, whose two sons, Theodebert and Theodoric, or Thierry, reigned after his death, the one in Austrasia, the other in Burgundy. Ethelbert succeeded his father, Ermenric, in 560. The kingdom of Kent, having enjoyed a continued peace for about 100 years, was arrived at a degree of power and riches which gave it a preeminence in the Saxon heptarchy in Britain, and so great a superiority and influence over the rest that Ethelbert is said by Bede to have ruled as far as the Humber, and Ethelbert is often styled King of the English. His queen Bertha was a very zealous and pious Christian princess, and by the articles of her marriage had free liberty to exercise her religion. The merit of the queen in the great work of her husband's conversion is acknowledged by our historians, and she deserved by her piety and great zeal to be compared by St. Gregory the Great to the celebrated St. Helen. Divine Providence, by these means, mercifully prepared the heart of a great king to entertain a favorable opinion of our holy religion, when St. Augustine landed in his dominions, to whose life the reader is referred for an account of this monarch's happy conversion to the faith. From that time he appeared quite changed into another man, it being for the remaining 20 years of his life his only ambition and endeavor to establish the perfect reign of Christ, both in his own soul and in the hearts of all his subjects. His ardor in the exercises of true virtue, which is not to be acquired without much labor and pains, self-denial and watchfulness, resolution and constancy. Great were doubtless the difficulties and dangers which he had to encounter in subduing his passions, and in vanquishing many obstacles which the world and devil failed not to raise. But these trials were infinitely subservient to his spiritual advancement, by rousing him continually to a greater vigilance and fervor, and by the many victories and the exercise of all heroic virtues of which they furnished the occasions. In the government of his kingdom, his thoughts were altogether turned upon the means of best promoting the welfare of his people. He enacted most wholesome laws, which were held in high esteem in succeeding ages in this island. He abolished the worship of idols throughout his kingdom, and shut up their temples or turned them into churches. His royal palace at Canterbury he gave for the use of the Archbishop St. Austin. He founded in that city the cathedral called Christ Church, and built without the walls the abbey and church of Saints Peter and Paul, afterwards called St. Austin's. The foundation of St. Andrew's at Rochester, St. Paul's at London, and many other churches, affords many standing proofs of his munificence to the Church and the servants of God. He was instrumental in bringing over to the faith of Christ Cerbert, king of the East Saxons, with his people, and Redwald, king of the East Angles, though the latter, afterwards relapsing, pretended to join the worship of idols with that of Christ. King Ethelbert, after having reigned 56 years, exchanged his temporal diadem for an eternal crown in 616, and was buried in the church of Saints Peter and Paul. His remains were afterwards deposited under the high altar in the same church, then called St. Austin's. St. Ethelbert is commemorated on this day in the British and Roman martyrologies. He was vulgarly called by our ancestors St. Albert, under which name he is titular saint of several churches in England, particularly of one in Norwich, which was built before the cathedral, an account of which is given by Blomfield in his History of Norfolk and the city of Norwich. Polydore Virgil tells us that a light was kept always burning before the tomb of St. Ethelbert, and was sometimes an instrument of miracles, even to the days of Henry VIII.